So welcome, guys, to our video, this series on criminal law. We continue on our discussion, and as you saw on the slide that was shown there, we're going to discuss inchoate offences. And in this particular video, our emphasis is going to be on conspiracy. So first, this is going to be the structural outline of our discussion. One, we'll discuss what we mean by an inchoate offense. Two, what do we mean by the offense of conspiracy? Three, what are the elements of conspiracy? So these are the three points that we're going to discuss in this particular video. Subsequent videos will also look at the other kinds of inchoate offenses that I'll be discussing. All right, so let's go to our first pointer. Our first point. What is or are inchoate offenses? Now, let me illustrate it this way. I'm sure you may be a soccer fan. You love football. You may be a Barcelona or Chelsea or Real Madrid fan. Now, one of the most exciting moments for football lovers, those who watch football, is when, for example, your team wants to score a goal. Now, in the build-up to the goal, let's take a typical move. This is how the move starts. So the goalkeeper on the side of your team has the ball in his post. Then he flings the ball to a player who is probably found in the central midfield, what they call around the center circle. That is where the action just begins to get exciting. He makes a 1-2 move, passes the ball to another person on the wing. Then this person dashes across the wings, and you realize that all the fans are agitated. We are just anticipating what is going to happen. The point is, what is our expectation? Our expectation is that probably just want to see the other build-ups of the moves that will end up in the goal, true or false. So maybe the person at the wing crosses the ball, maybe one of the tall strikers who is hanging somewhere in the middle of the 18-yard box jumps high, towers over all the other defenders, then hits his head against the ball, and there it is in the net. The whole crowd begins to scream in joy, excitement, and delirium. But you see, that particular goal that was scored was started off by the move of the goalkeeper at the onset of the game, where he flanked the ball to the player at the midfield. This analogy helps us to get a bit of an explanation or clarity, or is in consistence with what we're going to discuss as an inchoate offense. Now, substantive crimes, murder, rape, defrauding by false pretense, stealing, robbery, can be compared to hitting the ball right into the net. That is the ultimate goal. Once the ball is able to go into the net, we have scored a goal. So once the robbery happens, we are fine. Once the murder takes place, the crime has been committed. Once that female has been raped, the crime has been committed. But you see, it does not just come like that. There is always a build-up. There are always people and persons who are bits and parts of pieces of the plan or puzzle, who contribute in various diverse ways and play various roles to make sure that that ball gets into the net. Likewise, when there's a substantive crime, often than not, there are persons who are beside the scene. Probably persons who hatched the plot, who thought about it, those who brought in that, those who brought money, those who are actually going to go into the real execution. All these people have got various sets of rules that they play in making sure that that particular action will happen. So you realize that in a particular criminal case, if the police delve into an investigation, they catch the person who, for example, if it was a murder case, the person who maybe killed the victim, all right? After further interrogation, the police will come out and tell us that, oh, okay, they've got another person, A, B, C, they've arrested this, they've arrested that, So you begin to realize that the act of committing the murder was not just one person, but involved several people. So the point is that anytime there's a commission of a crime, think of the substantive crime as the goal or the ball that has entered into the net. But we should also be interested in the other builds up to the particular event. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call in criminal law an inchoate offense. So the inchoate offense refers to all those kinds of offenses, all those classifications of actions and behaviors and attributes and situations that have coordinated in culminating into the occurrence of the event. We call them an inchoate offense. You understand that? All right, now there are three basic categories of inchoate offenses. Number one is what we call conspiracy. Two is what we call abetment, and 3 is what we call an attempt. The point is, if you are looking at all these kind of coordinated actions that will culminate in a particular offense being committed, be it an offense of murder, an offense of rape, an offense of stealing, an offense of robbery, and all that, the various roles that we played by different people and situations and actions can be categorized into these 3. It will either be a conspiracy, or it will be an abetment, or it will constitute an attempt. In this particular video, we will focus on just the first part, or one of the parts of the inchoate offense, that is the offense of conspiracy. We'll discuss that in the subsequent videos. We'll now look at the other inchoate offense of abetment, and the other video will also discuss the offense of attempt. Hope you're okay. All right, so now that we get that, let's set the ball rolling for our discussion on the inchoate offense of conspiracy. Okay, so now that we understand what an inchoate offense is, or what we mean by inchoate, what exactly do we mean by conspiracy? I'm sure you heard that word conspiracy. When we say conspiracy, many people, and I'm sure even before you started studying the law, understood conspiracy to mean that maybe 1 or 2 persons have come together to act in a particular way and all that. All right, first, we want to try and understand the rationale, why we say conspiracy ought to be a criminal offense. Why is it that in several jurisdictions, not just here in Ghana, but other common law jurisdictions and so many parts of the world, that particular action of conspiracy is always considered as an offense? What at all is conspiracy? Okay, we'll move on to the 19th century, way back in England. And remember, we mentioned England because Ghana, as a common law jurisdiction, has had many of our laws being developed from the way they came from England. So sometimes when we are interested in the historical antecedents, where we are now, and we want to know where we came from, we try to go back and try and understand all these things. Now, there was what we call the Law Reform Commission, the Law Commission, which is also the same as so many parts. The much of their ideas is to try and help how statutes are developed and built, and ideas as to how the laws have to be crafted and all that. Way back around the 19th century, around 1846, when the Law Commission was trying to present its report to those members of the legislature in England, one of the things that they wrote is of persuasive effect, and it helps us to get an appreciation of what we mean by conspiracy. Now, this is what the Law Commission said at the time in England around the 19th century. And it is, like I said, it's of persuasive effect. Let's pay attention to some of these statements that was made by the Commission of Law Reforms. Now, speaking by the Criminal Law Commission on their 7th report in 1843, it said, on conspiracy, the general principle on which crime of conspiracy is founded is this: that the confederacy of several persons to effect any injurious object creates such a new and additional power to cause injury as it requires criminal restraint, although none will be necessary, nor the same thing proposed or even attempted to be done by any person singly. That was the Criminal Law Commission's report in 1843 by England. You saw what was said, or the points that was raised, in why we say that conspiracy has to be made, or it constitutes an offense. Now, you know, like I said, I take it from what we all basically understand about conspiracy. When you have 2 or more persons maybe partnering or agreeing to do something wrong like that, we call that conspiracy. Later, we'll come to see what the statute defines conspiracy to mean. But the Law Commission statement is that, you see, when there's a confederacy of 2 or more people together, they put their heads together to kind of perpetuate a crime or cause an injurious object to happen to somebody. The mere fact that there was an agreement, okay, by more than one person to have that done increases the likelihood of the crime being committed. So the point is that the rationale for trying to make conspiracy a crime, and again, conspiracy being an inchoate offense, being part of those offenses that are part of the build-up to the substantive offense, is that when 2 or more persons agree to commit the crime, the likelihood of the crime coming off, materializing, is increased. Okay, and also the danger that it portends for the victim is also increased. You know, the other bit of the point is that there are certain kinds of crimes, okay, or the way sometimes crimes are committed, you would realize that if that crime did not involve more than one person, there was no way it could have come out. Now, around 2007, I will not mention the name, okay? I will not mention the name of the fellow. I mean, one of a very famous, a famous guy in the showbiz industry in Ghana was killed. Now, he lived in a real estate community, all right, somewhere in Accra. When you look at the images that the police showed in his house, it's a gated community, all right? And in the gated community, where he lived in particular, it was a story building. His house was fenced. He had an electric wiring around his house. He lived in a story building. His room was on the story, or at the top of the building, and he had metallic doors all around. All his doors were shut. Now, under some circumstances, people woke up in one particular morning and found out that in the night they had heard him screaming as if he was wrestling with somebody and that kind of stuff. When the police came there, they found his dead body in his room. He had been bludgeoned or stabbed to death, or some people also claimed that he was even shot. There was blood all over his room. You understand that? His kitchen doors had been broken down. Several rooms in his apartment had been broken down. The electric and wire fencing that was there had been cut. Now, guys, the question is that, do you think that this particular situation, where this guy was murdered in this room, was done by one person? Do you reasonably think that that is the case? That one person was able to enter into a gated community, scale over his wall, cut over his things, break down his kitchen, went into his room, and just that particular single person was able to stab him multiple times or shoot him and cause his death. Look at the sequence of events. You understand that? So usually the belief or the presumption is that there are certain kinds of crimes that it will need a coordination of more than one or two persons. And the fact that there is a coordination of more than one or two persons, it increases the likelihood that that particular crime will happen. And if the crime also happens, because there is more than one person involved, there's also an increased likelihood that the perpetrators of the crime will escape, or the object of causing injury to the victim will also materialize. So that is the philosophical reasoning, the rationale behind why we say that then, even before the crime happens, even before the rape occurs, even before the robbery occurs, even before the murder occurs, all the preparatory stages or all the persons who were part in trying to link up, building the plot to make sure that that crime will occur, they should also be punished, such that it will dissuade other people from coming together to do that particular action. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we call the offense of conspiracy. When two or more persons have put their minds together to make sure that a crime or an injurious action is perpetuated. All right, so without much ado, we'll now switch on to the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29, Section 23, Subsection 1. It defines what under Ghanaian law we mean by conspiracy as a criminal offense. Section 23(1) of the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29. Section 23, Conspiracy, Subsection 1. Where two or more persons agree to act together with a common purpose for or in committing or abetting the criminal offense, whether with or without the previous consent or deliberation, each of them commits a conspiracy to commit or abet the criminal offense. So you saw under Section 23 of the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29, subsection 1 of Section 23, and that gives us the statutory definition of conspiracy under Ghanaian law. An appraisal of the definition or the statements from the statute will reveal four key things. One, in the offense of conspiracy, there should be two or more persons. All right? Two, there has to be an agreement for the two to act together. Three, that particular agreement was for the purpose, or there was a common purpose in the agreement to commit something. Had a common purpose. And finally, the common purpose for which that particular agreement was held was to commit a crime. Hope you understand that. So these are the four key elements or constituents or ingredients of what we call conspiracy. So again, if there are two or more persons who are involved in agreeing to act together, and the purpose of the action is that they share a common purpose, and that particular common purpose is designed or is in a manner to perpetuate a crime or to abet a crime, the persons or the group of persons who are there by the statute, they are guilty of what we call conspiracy. Hope you understand that. Good. So you see, when we say conspiracy, that is what we essentially mean. So let's take a case of a murder example. There's a substantive offense of murder. All right. If someone is murdered, for example, and other persons are charged as conspirators, what would perhaps might have been their role? Maybe there was somebody who, for example, procured a weapon. There was a plot where they discussed the fellow, the time that the person will come home and all that. Where will we meet him? Where will we find him? Okay, when we do this, what happens? You see, so all those who are part of that agreement, we say that they are guilty of the offense of conspiracy. Because remember, where there is no agreement, nothing can even happen. Even the good book says that in the absence of confidential talk, plans will fail. When there is no plan, there is no way that a particular action will happen. So the law then presumes that any group of persons who were part of a plot, who were part of a mental agreement, an agreement to make sure that there was going to be a common design and purpose to perpetuate a criminal object, they will be guilty of the crime of conspiracy. All right, so for students, at this juncture, what I want you to understand is that if you are writing an exam, okay, a typical criminal law exam, either your end of semester, and I keep mentioning preparing for a Ghana School of Law, when you read the facts, and the facts suggest to you that there has been a crime that has been committed, it could be a crime, a sexual offense, like a crime of sexual assault, or it could be an assault, it could be forgery, it could be crimes of dishonesty, any of them. One of the things that you have to be looking at is that when one or two or three or more persons are mentioned in the question, your mind should now be averting to the inchoate offences. That is, those who were part of the plot that allowed that particular crime to materialize. Hope you understand that. So when you begin to pay attention to those particular individuals who were part, then these inchoate offenses will now be panning out. And the first one that we are discussing about is conspiracy. The question is that, was there an agreement between two or more persons? Do they agree with a common purpose or design? And was the purpose or the understanding to mean that these individuals were going to commit a criminal offense? If that is the case, then all those persons will be guilty of conspiracy. You understand that? All right. So now I'll take you to one of a very interesting Ghanaian case. It's the Republic versus Ibrahim Adam and others. This was a high court case. And you know, Ibrahim Adam was a member of parliament, if you remember, somewhere around during the first session or second session of parliament. Okay, he was a member of parliament. At one time, he was the Minister of Food and Agriculture. Now, Ibrahim Adam was charged with causing financial loss to the state and conspiracy to cause financial loss to the state with his other group. The members of this group were the former finance minister, Mr. Kwame Pepra, and George Sipayanki. You remember that story, that they had gone into some particular contract, and the aim of the contract was to have caused financial loss to the state of Ghana. So that matter was held by Justice Kwame Afre at the High Court, okay, and they were eventually convicted for causing financial loss and conspiracy to cause financial loss to the state. Now, our interest was in the kind of the judicial pronouncement or the law upon which this particular conviction was rested, and it gives us a bit of idea as to what we actually mean when we also refer to as conspiracy. So we take a cue from the decision in that case, the Republic versus Ibrahim Ada and 4 others. Let's see what the court said with respect to conspiracy in that matter. By courts, the crime of conspiracy is completely committed if it is committed at all. The moment 2 or more have agreed that they will do at one or at some future time certain things. It is not necessary in order to complete the offense that any one thing should be done beyond the agreement. The conspirators may repent and stop, or may be prevented, or may fail. Nevertheless, the crime is committed. It was completed when they agreed. You saw what the court said in that particular matter. So, spot on, and the point is clear. We are saying that anytime there is an agreement, okay, there may have to be, it may not necessarily have to be a previous deliberation or not. But we are saying that the agreement is essential. And remember, when we mention agreements, we are talking about whether or not these persons understood a particular role they had to play in the action. It constitutes an agreement. All right? So when any of the persons who are there agree or understand that they have a particular role to play, and the role that they are going to play, they know that the role is going to facilitate or is going to end up or culminate in the eventual commission of the crime. That could be said to be part of the plot, or they could be said to be conspirators, and hence they will be guilty of the offense of conspiracy. It is an inchoate offense. So you remember, if you've not seen our video on the offense of robbery, you can just go and look at it on the offense of robbery. You know the famous case that we always remember, Frimpong alias Ibuman, Kwaku Frimpong alias Ibuman versus the Republic. We discussed extensively in our case when we're talking about the offense of robbery. Now you know that Ibuman, who at the time, as we mentioned in our discussion, was a fools dealer, a second-hand clothes dealer at Cantonmanto, or Makola also followed his people to go and do some particular operation somewhere. Okay, so eventually was arrested, and as we saw in the way we explained, he was charged with conspiracy. Now, why do we say that Ibuman was charged with conspiracy? You know, when you look at the facts, his only role that he played at the time was to have gone there. When he went there, he was the one who was standing at the gate, whilst his friends were in the room doing the operation themselves. But the question is that, if he didn't understand that he had a role, what was he doing there at that particular time? You don't live there, and you are standing in front of someone's gate around 1 a.m., and you know that is not your house. What are you standing in front of a house at 1 a.m.? So clearly, the observations or the facts will clearly show that there was an understanding that there was a particular role that he had to play. And obviously, those persons who were inside, they knew Ibuman will alert them if there was anything going on untoward. For example, if there was a police patrol that were coming, they knew that their watch out guy was going to inform them of what was going to happen. So we can see an agreement in there. Spot on. That is just what we mean by the offense of conspiracy. When there is an agreement by persons, okay, to act together with a common purpose or design, it constitutes an inchoate offense of conspiracy. I hope you understand what we mean by that. All right, that is fine. Okay, so also remember in the case, one of the famous cases, we'll come to it when we discuss the other inchoate offense of abetment. Now the case is Azamechi and others versus the Republic. You know, these people were part of a fishing group somewhere in the Volta region that they call Kweji. And Azamechi was the lead person who was the leader of this group. His job was that he tries and apportions, he gives them some kind of support. Now in one particular meeting, they said that the fishing season was closed, and therefore they had to kind of prepare themselves towards the fishing season. At a meeting at Azamechi's house, the agreement was that one of the members of the fishing group was to be sacrificed. Yes, you heard me well. One of them has to be sacrificed to the gods, said that the gods will give them a bumper harvest. Eventually, as events may turn out, they got the guy and they murdered him. And the police did the investigation, and Azamechi was arrested. What do you think he would have been charged with? Conspiracy. Of course. Why? Because there was a meeting. And you know, anytime there is a meeting, the purpose of the meeting is that all the members of the meeting will come to an agreement. I'm not sure people meet to disagree. Well, even when they disagree, the eventual outcome is that they have to agree on certain core portions. So once there was a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting was to agree to a human sacrifice of one of the members of the group, clearly the offense of conspiracy had kicked in. Eventually, as we have said, the court upheld his conviction that he was guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and eventually murder. So guys, that is what we mean by the inchoate offenses that we've discussed. Again, we've explained to you what inchoate offenses mean. We are saying that they refer to the general structure or framework or other associated offenses that allow the substantive offense to materialize. And we mentioned that these inchoate offenses could either be offense of conspiracy, abetment, or an attempt. In this video, our emphasis has been on the offense of conspiracy. We've defined what conspiracy is and this element. In the subsequent videos, as we've mentioned, we'll discuss abetment and attempt. And note to students again, remember, all the simple offenses that we know, we can always attach an inchoate offense to them. Okay? You can always have the offense of conspiracy, adding to rape, conspiracy, adding to stealing, conspiracy, adding to murder, conspiracy, adding to all the other small offenses. So if you are doing an exam and you are presenting the facts, the issues that you raise will not necessarily just be on whether or not there's a criminal liability with respect to the substantive crime. There will also be a criminal liability with respect to the other inchoate offenses of conspiracy and etc. All right? Okay. So stay tuned in the second part of our discussion of inchoate offenses. This time, we're going to pay attention to abetment.